The cargo vessel Pathfinder moved slowly through the darkness of space, and every second that passed made things worse. Captain Minho Park stood in the bridge of his ship and looked at the screens around him. Red warning lights blinked everywhere. The ship was falling apart, and he knew it. Around him, the walls made soft creaking sounds as the pressure inside the vessel became weaker and weaker. Minho was a tall man with dark hair and tired eyes. He had been the captain of the Pathfinder for 10 years, and he had seen many problems before, but nothing like this. The ship had entered a place in space that people called the Void, a region where many ships had disappeared and never returned. It was a dark place where even the stars seemed far away. Something had happened to the engines during their journey. No one knew exactly what. One moment, everything was working fine. The next moment, alarms were screaming and the ship was losing power. Yi Jin, the astrophysicist, worked at her station with focused eyes. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as she tried to understand what was happening to their ship. She was a young woman in her early 30s, smart and calm even when things were bad. Next to her, Oh Song, the chief engineer, was pushing buttons and checking numbers on his screen. Oh was older, in his late 40s, with hair that showed he had seen many difficult situations in his life. "Captain," Oh said, his voice quiet but serious, "we have maybe 4 hours before the main reactor fails completely. After that, we will have no power, no heat, no life support systems." Minho nodded. He had expected this answer, but hearing it said out loud made it feel more real. "What about the backup systems?" he asked. "The backup systems are damaged," Oh replied. "The explosion from the engine room took out 2 of the 3 backup generators. We have one left, but it will only work for a few more hours." The captain closed his eyes for a moment. Around him, his crew of 8 people waited and watched. Some of them were young, some were old. All of them were scared, but they did not show it. They had been trained to stay calm in emergencies, and they did their jobs without complaining. Hey Moon was the radio operator. He sat at his station near the back of the bridge, his hands resting on the communication buttons. He looked at the captain and said, "Captain, should I send out the distress signal now? We are in a dangerous area. Maybe someone will hear us." Minho thought about this for a few seconds. The Void was not a place where you usually found other ships. It was empty. It was dangerous, but they had no choice. They had to try to find help, even if the chances were small. "Yes," Minho said. "Send out the SOS. Use all frequencies. Maybe someone will hear us." Hay's fingers moved across his keyboard. The distress signal went out into the darkness of space, traveling at the speed of light in all directions. It was a simple message, repeated over and over. A call for help from a small human ship that was dying in the emptiness of space. What Minho and his crew did not know was that this signal would change everything. In the hours that followed, 3 different responses came back to the Pathfinder. The first response was from a race of beings made of crystal and light. They sent their message in mathematical language, cold and without emotion. They said they would come to help, but they wanted information about the humans first. They were interested in humanity because humans were new to space. They wanted to know everything about how humans thought and worked. The second response came from the mind, a collective of beings that shared one consciousness. All were connected to each other through technology and thought. They communicated as one, even though they had billions of individual bodies. The mind was curious about humans because humans were divided. Each human was separate. Each human had different thoughts. This was very strange to the mind. The third response came from the Orion Assembly, an ancient group of many different alien species who had worked together for thousands of years. The Orion Assembly had seen many civilizations rise and fall. They saw humans as children who did not understand the dangers of the galaxy. All 3 powers sent ships to the location of the Pathfinder. They would arrive within hours, but when they arrived, they did not come as helpers. They came as hunters. They came because they saw something valuable that they wanted to take. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, Yi Jin was reading the incoming messages. Her face became pale as she understood what the messages really meant. "Captain," she said, "these are not rescue ships. These are military vessels. They want to take our ship. They want to take us." Minho looked at the screens showing the approach of the three alien fleets. He felt fear, but he also felt something else. He felt determination. He had survived many difficult situations in his life. He had lost people. He had made mistakes, but he had never given up. "Listen to me," he said to his crew, his voice strong and clear. "We are going to survive this. I do not know how yet, but we will find a way. We are human. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We find new ways. We find answers that no one else can find." The young members of the crew looked at their captain. They saw confidence in his face. They saw that he believed they could survive. Yijin turned back to her screens. She began to search through the ship's database, looking for any information that might help them. In the computer systems of the Pathfinder, there were old files, very old files from Earth. Stories of humans who had faced impossible situations. Stories of people who had survived when no one thought they could survive. O began to work with his hands, fixing things, creating new solutions from broken parts. Wu Han, the medical officer, made sure that everyone was healthy enough to face what was coming. Hei Moon kept his hands on the communication buttons, ready to do whatever the captain asked. The alien ships were coming closer. The void was about to become the place where humanity would show the galaxy what it really meant to be human. The SOS signal that Minho had ordered Hei to send out was about to change the entire future of human civilization among the stars. But no one on the Pathfinder knew this yet. They only knew that they had to survive the next few hours. The darkness of space surrounded the little human ship, and in that darkness, something incredible was about to begin. The three alien ships arrived at almost the same time, taking positions around the Pathfinder like hunters circling prey. Each ship was massive, far larger than the small human vessel. The ship was made of crystalline structures that shined with an inner light. The Mind ship was sleek and perfect, every angle carefully designed by a 1,000-year-old artificial intelligence. The Orion Assembly's ship was ancient and built from metals that no human had ever seen before. Minho watched from the bridge as the three fleets sent their messages. The captain stood very straight, his hands clasped behind his back, trying to look calm even though his heart was beating very fast. Around him, his crew was silent. They knew that the next few minutes would decide whether they lived or died. The first message came from Their words appeared on the screen in mathematical symbols that the Pathfinder's computer automatically translated into human language. "Surrender your vessel and all its data. Surrender yourselves. You will be transported for study. Resistance will result in destruction. This is not a request. This is a demand." The second message came from the Mind. "You carry genetic information that is unusual in the galaxy. Your consciousness is fragmented. This is fascinating and dangerous. You will come with us. Your individual minds will be merged into our collective. You will no longer suffer the pain of being alone. You will be complete." The third message was from the Orion Assembly. Their voice was older, deeper, and it carried the weight of thousands of years of authority. "Young species, you are in danger. You do not understand what you have discovered. We will take your ship and your people for your own protection. Do not fight us. You cannot win." All three messages ended with one word: now. Minho's face did not change. Inside, though, he was thinking very fast. These three powers had never worked together before. In fact, according to Yi Jin's research, they had been enemies for thousands of years. They had fought wars that destroyed entire star systems. But now, they all wanted the same thing. They all wanted the humans. O was standing next to Minho. His hands were shaking a little. "Captain," he said quietly, "they outnumber us and outgun us 1,000 to 1. We have no weapons, we have no shields, we cannot fight them." "I know," Minho said. He was thinking about something that Yi Jin had shown him earlier. She had discovered old files in the ship's database, Earth files, stories of great human achievements, stories of humans who had faced impossible odds. Minho looked at Yi Jin. She was young, only in her 30s, but she was brilliant. She had studied human history, and she understood something important. She understood that humans did not survive through strength or technology. They survived through their minds and their hearts. Yi Jin, Minho said, I need you to think about something. You have studied Earth history. You have read about explorers and survivors. What did they do when they faced situations they could not escape? Yi Jin looked at the captain. She understood what he was asking. They did not accept that they were going to die, she said. They found new ways. They used what they had. They thought of solutions that no one else could think of. Yes, Minho said. He turned to O. Can you make it look like our engines are destroying themselves? Can you create false signals that show we are shutting down all our systems? O's tired face suddenly became active again. He understood what the captain was thinking. Yes, he said. I can do that. I can create a cascade of false signals. I can make it seem like the reactor is overloading. But why? What good will that do? Do it, Minho said. Then he turned to Hay. And you, I want you to do something different. I want you to send a message to all three fleets. I want you to broadcast it on all frequencies. I want the entire galaxy to hear what you are going to say. Hay looked confused. What do you want me to say, Captain? Tell them the truth, Minho said. Tell them about us. Tell them who we really are. Yi Jin suddenly understood what the captain was trying to do. She stood up from her station. He wants to show them, she said. He wants to show them what humans really are. The crew got to work. O's fingers flew across his engineering console. Fake error messages flooded the screens. The Mind and the Orion assembly all watched on their sensors as the Pathfinder's power signature began to drop. They thought the humans were destroying their own ship rather than surrender. But at the same time, Hay was typing a message. It was not a formal communication. It was not a military message. It was simple. It was direct. It was the truth. Hay sent a message in basic mathematical language, a form of communication that every intelligent species in the galaxy could understand. The message was not written in words. It was written in numbers and equations, and it told a story. The story showed the crew of the Pathfinder. It showed Captain Minho making sure that every crew member had food and water even when supplies were low. It showed Wu Han, the medical officer, working for 16 hours without sleep to keep one of the younger crew members healthy. It showed Oh Song, the engineer, teaching the younger members of the crew, passing on his knowledge even though he knew their situation was hopeless. It showed Yi Jin staying calm and looking for solutions instead of accepting defeat. It showed Hay Moon maintaining the communication systems, even though no one believed anyone would hear their call for help. It showed ordinary humans doing extraordinary things, not because they had advanced technology, not because they had superior weapons, but because something inside them refused to accept that hope was lost. The message went out into the galaxy, and something happened that the three alien powers had not expected. The message did not just reach the military fleets. It reached civilian ships. It reached space stations. It reached billions of ordinary aliens across the galaxy who had never seen a human before. Traders from a dozen species watched the Pathfinder's crew work together to survive. Mothers from 5 different civilizations saw the humans protecting the youngest members of their group. Scientists from peaceful worlds watched as humans used their minds and their hearts to face impossible odds. For the first time, the galaxy was seeing humanity not through the eyes of military commanders or politicians. They were seeing humanity through the eyes of ordinary people facing death, and what they saw changed something in them. They saw beings who would not give up. They saw beings who cared for each other. They saw beings who were worth saving. Though the Mind and the Orion Assembly did not yet understand what was happening, but the changes had already begun. The message was spreading, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The message spread through the galaxy faster than anyone could have predicted. It jumped from ship to ship, from station to station, from world to world. In less than an hour, billions of beings had seen what the Pathfinder crew was doing, and they could not look away. On a mining station orbiting a red star, a worker named watched the message with confusion. The mind had taught all of its members that individual thought was weakness, but in the message from the humans saw something different. The humans were separate. Each human was alone inside their own mind, yet they worked together perfectly. They did not need to be connected. They did not need to share consciousness. They chose to help each other. Sent a message to the collective consciousness of the mind. The message was simple. Why are we afraid of beings like this? Why do we want to destroy something beautiful? The message caused a disturbance in the mind. For the first time, individuals were asking questions. For the first time, they were not following orders without thinking. On the ancient world of Velar Prime, an Orion scholar named watched the message with tears in her eyes. The Orion Assembly had been ruling the galaxy for 5,000 years. In all that time, they had fought wars. They had destroyed civilizations. They had done these things because they believed it was necessary. But now, watching a small human ship refuse to give up, watching humans care for each other without being forced to do so, understood something. The Orion people had forgotten why they had ever started trying to lead the galaxy. They had forgotten about hope. They had forgotten about sacrifice. They had forgotten about the things that made life worth living. Humanity had shown them these things again. Stood in the library of the Orion Assembly. Around her, thousands of other scholars and leaders were also watching the message. She did not need to say anything. She could see it in their faces. They were remembering. They were feeling something they had not felt in a very long time. On a research station near a young scientist named studied the mathematics of the human message. They had always believed that logic and mathematics were the highest forms of knowledge. They believed that emotion and feeling were weaknesses. But the Pathfinder's crew had used both logic and emotion. They had used their minds to solve problems, and they had used their hearts to keep going when the problem seemed impossible. Understood that they had been wrong about something fundamental. The humans had shown that logic and emotion were not opposites. They worked together. They made each other stronger. Mathematics and feeling were not enemies. They were partners. Sent a message to the government. The message was polite but firm. We should not destroy beings who have shown us a better way to think. In the hours after the message spread, something remarkable happened across the galaxy. Ordinary beings began to protest. They did not want their military to attack the humans. They did not want their leaders to destroy the Pathfinder. On 100 different worlds, workers stopped working. On 1,000 different stations, traders stopped trading. Billions of ordinary beings stood together and said the same thing with their silence and their presence. We will not let you do this. The 3 military fleets were ordered to attack the Pathfinder. But when the commanders sent orders to their troops, they found something unexpected. Many of their soldiers refused to follow the orders. These soldiers had seen the message. They had seen the humans. They could not attack them. They would not attack them. On the bridge of the flagship, the Supreme Commander looked at the numbers in front of him. His own forces were turning against him. The collective was breaking apart as individuals refused to obey the collective command. The Orion Assembly military was in chaos as officers refused to follow orders from their leaders. The 3 powers had been preparing to attack together, but they realized something terrible had happened. Their own people would not let them. Their own societies were rising up against them. Meanwhile, on the Pathfinder, Captain Minho and his crew did not know that they had sparked a revolution. They only knew that O's false signals had worked. The 3 fleets had stopped their approach. They were not moving forward. They were not attacking. Wu Han, the medical officer, checked on each crew member. She wanted to make sure they were healthy. She found that everyone was scared, but everyone was also trying to be brave. She moved from person to person, touching their shoulders, telling them that it was going to be okay. She did not know if this was true, but she knew it was what they needed to hear. Sung Ho, the chief geologist, had been injured during the early problems with the ship. A piece of metal had cut his arm badly, but he had refused to let Wu give him medicine that would put him to sleep. He wanted to be awake and ready to help if the crew needed him. So he worked with his arm bandaged, helping O repair critical systems even though every movement caused him pain. Na, the communications specialist, was the youngest member of the crew. She was only 22 years old. She was very scared, but she sat next to the older crew members and she helped them. She brought them water. She helped them with their work. By helping others, she also helped herself feel less afraid. The Pathfinder's crew did not know that across the galaxy, billions of beings were watching them and thinking about them. They did not know that their simple act of staying together, of helping each other, of refusing to give up, had changed something in the hearts of countless aliens. But the leaders of the three powers knew, and they were frightened. They realized that they no longer controlled their own people. The galaxy had seen something new. The galaxy had seen humanity, and humanity had reminded the galaxy of something very important. It had reminded them that hope was stronger than weapons. It had reminded them that love was stronger than power. For the first time in thousands of years, the three military powers found themselves unable to act. They could not destroy the Pathfinder because their own people would not let them. They had to sit and watch as the small human ship survived, and they had to wonder what this would mean for the future of their civilization. The military leaders of the three powers met in secret to discuss what was happening. They met on a neutral station that had been used for peace talks before. They were angry. They were confused. Most of all, they were losing control. The Supreme Commander was tall and made entirely of crystalline structures that glowed with blue light. His name was, and he had ruled his people for 300 years. He had never failed before. He had never encountered something he could not solve with logic and calculation. The mind was represented by a single body called Speaker for All. This body could speak the thoughts of the entire collective. But now, the speaker was having trouble. The collective consciousness was breaking apart. Individual members were refusing to stay connected to the main consciousness. The Orion Assembly sent their oldest leader, a being named who had lived for 15,000 years, had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. He had thought he had seen everything, but he had never seen anything like this. "We must destroy the human ship," said. His voice was cold and sharp like breaking glass. "We must eliminate them before they cause more damage to the social order across the galaxy." Speaker for All made a sound like wind moving through mountains. "The collective cannot agree," the voice said. "Our people refuse. We cannot force them to attack without tearing apart the unity we have spent 10,000 years building." Was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was sad. "I have thought of something that troubles me greatly," said. "We came to attack the humans because we were afraid of them. We were afraid of how they thought. We were afraid of how they felt. We were afraid because they were different from us. But now I think we were afraid for a different reason. We were afraid because they showed us something we had forgotten about ourselves." Turned to face. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean," said slowly, "that we have all become very strong and very powerful, but we have become weak in the places that matter. The humans showed their people the truth. They did not hide. They did not use propaganda. They did not lie. They simply showed what they really were, and their people loved them for it." The three leaders sat in silence. They knew that was right. They also knew that they could not go back. Things had changed. The galaxy had changed. At this moment, a message came from the Pathfinder. Captain Minho requested a meeting with the leaders of the three powers. He asked to speak with them directly. The three leaders looked at each other. They were not used to taking orders from humans, but they agreed. When Min-ho entered the meeting room, he was not alone. With him came Yi-jin, his astrophysicist. Yi-jin carried a small device that could project images and data. She was nervous, but her face was calm. Min-ho bowed to each of the three leaders, a gesture of respect from Earth. The gesture surprised them. Humans were supposed to be primitive. Humans were supposed to be weak. Yet this human showed respect and honor to beings he had been trying to fight against hours before. "Leaders of the three powers," Min-ho began, "I do not come here to argue with you. I do not come here to fight with you. I come here to ask a simple question. What if we did something different? What if we did something that has never been done before in the galaxy?" Leaned forward. "What do you mean?" he asked. Min-ho looked at Yi-jin. She activated her device. Images filled the room. They were images of Earth. They showed mountains and oceans and cities. They showed humans working together. They showed humans building. They showed humans teaching each other. They showed humans loving each other. "We are a young species," Min-ho said. "We are not as advanced as you. We do not have your weapons. We do not have your technology, but we have something that I think you have all lost. We have hope. We have the ability to believe in each other even when things look impossible." Yi-jin spoke next. "They have forgotten that logic without hope is just cold calculation. The mind has forgotten that being separate can be a strength, not a weakness. And the Orion Assembly has forgotten that leading the galaxy means caring about the beings you lead, not controlling them." Speaker for All made a sound that was almost like crying. "This is true," the voice said. "We have forgotten." Min-ho continued. "We propose something new. We propose that the three of your civilizations and humanity come together to create something different, not a military alliance, not a government that rules through force, something better." "What?" asked. "A council," Min-ho said. "A place where all beings can share their wisdom, where leaders listen to their people, where strength is measured not by weapons but by the ability to care for others, where we measure success not by power but by how much hope we have given to our people." Was quiet for a long time. Then he stood up very slowly. At 15,000 years old, his movements were careful. He looked at Min-ho directly. "Young captain," said, "I have made many mistakes in my long life. I have started wars when I should have tried peace. I have used force when I should have used understanding. You are right. We have forgotten something important, and I think it is time we learned it again." And Speaker for All looked at each other. They did not speak, but something passed between them, an agreement without words. The three leaders stood up. One by one they came and stood beside Min-ho and Yi-jin. It was not a gesture of surrender. It was a gesture of partnership. It was a gesture that said, "We are tired of being alone. We want to learn how to be together." They sent a message to their people saying they had made a mistake. They ordered their weapons to stand down. The mind released their collective hold on their people, allowing them to be both individuals and part of a greater whole. The Orion Assembly disbanded their military fleets and called their people home. And across the galaxy, ordinary beings heard the news. They heard that the three great powers had chosen peace. They heard that they had chosen to learn from humanity. They heard that something new was being born. The small cargo ship Pathfinder, which had been dying in the darkness of space, had become the most important ship in the galaxy. And its crew, 8 ordinary humans, had become the teachers of worlds. They had shown the galaxy that the greatest strength was not in weapons or technology. It was in the human heart, in the human spirit, in the human will to survive and to help others survive. The rescue ships arrived 3 days later. They came not as weapons of war, but as helpers. The Pathfinder's failing systems were repaired. The crew was given food and medicine and rest. Captain Min-ho stood on the bridge of his ship and watched as engineers from 3 different alien species worked together to save his vessel. Something that should have been impossible was becoming real. Something that should have been a disaster was becoming a new beginning. The Pathfinder was taken to a neutral location, a space station that orbited a blue star in the exact center of the galaxy. This station had been built thousands of years ago as a monument to peace, but it had been abandoned long ago when the three powers began to argue with each other. Now it was being prepared again. Thousands of workers from 100 different species were cleaning it, repairing it, and preparing it for something important. The Unified Galactic Council was being created, and it would be unlike anything that had ever existed before in the galaxy. 6 months later, the first official meeting of the council took place. Representatives from over 500 different species gathered on the great station. They came in peace. They came to listen. They came to learn. Captain Minho was not a politician. He did not want to be a leader of governments, but he was asked to speak at the opening of the council. He stood before 500 species and told them something simple. "We are different," he said, "all of us. We think different thoughts. We feel different feelings. We have different colors and shapes and ways of living, and that is okay. That is beautiful, because different is not a reason for war. Different is a reason for wonder. Different is a reason to learn from each other." Minho told them about his crew. He told them about Yi Jin, the astrophysicist who had looked at old Earth history and found answers in the past that helped them survive the present. He told them about O, the engineer who had worked with injuries and pain to keep the ship alive. He told them about Wu Han, the medical officer who had worked without sleep to keep her crew healthy. He told them about Hei Moon, the radio operator who had sent a message of truth into the darkness. He told them about Na, the young specialist who had helped others even though she was scared. He told them about Sung Ho, the geologist who had worked with an injury because he wanted to help. He told them that these were not special people. These were ordinary humans. Each one of them could have given up. Each one of them could have accepted that they were going to die, but they did not. They chose to believe in each other. They chose to help each other. They chose to survive together. "This is what we are," Minho said. "This is who we are, and I think this is what you want to be also." The 500 species listened, and they understood. They understood that Minho was not asking them to become human. He was asking them to become better versions of themselves. In the years that followed, many things changed across the galaxy. The three great powers, the Mind and the Orion Assembly, began to share their knowledge with all the other species. They taught mathematics and science to species that wanted to learn. The Mind taught about communication and understanding between beings who were different. The Orion Assembly, with their 15,000 years of history, taught about patience and the long view. And humans taught something that no other species had been able to teach in the same way. Humans taught about hope. Humans taught about never giving up. Humans taught about believing in each other. Schools were built on 100 worlds where students from different species learned together. Scientists from different civilizations worked in the same laboratories. Traders traveled safely through space knowing that the great powers were watching to make sure they were treated fairly. Families were created between different species. Love was found in unexpected places. The weapons of war were slowly put away. They broke their crystal weapons into dust. The Mind took apart their military technology and used it to build things that helped people instead of harming them. The Orion Assembly gave away their ancient weapons and kept only the knowledge of how they had been made, as a reminder of a past they did not want to repeat. Yi Jin became a teacher. She traveled to universities across the galaxy and taught beings of all species about human history. She told them about how humans had survived on Earth against impossible odds. She told them about explorers and warriors and artists and scientists who had refused to give up. She told them that humanity's greatest achievement was not any single invention or discovery. It was the ability to keep hopping, to keep believing, to keep helping each other, even when everything seemed lost. O Song took over the reconstruction of the Pathfinder, but he did not rebuild it as a cargo ship. Instead, he rebuilt it as a school ship. Young beings from every species in the galaxy were invited to come and learn on the Pathfinder. They learned how Minho's crew had survived. They learned the practical knowledge of fixing broken things and solving problems. But more importantly, they learned about working together. They learned about caring for each other. 10 years after the SOS signal went out from the void, Minho received a message. It was from the Supreme Commander, had stepped down from his position. He had been a leader through force and control, but the new leaders were chosen differently. They were chosen by their people because they cared about their people. His message was simple. It said only this: "Thank you for showing me that I was wrong. Thank you for showing me a better way to live." Minho received similar messages from Speaker for All and from. They thanked him. They told him that their species were healing. They told him that hope had returned to their civilizations. Minho was now an old man. His hair was completely white. His hands were not as steady as they used to be. But he still walked every day on the space station that had once been abandoned and was now the center of a new civilization. One day he stood alone looking out at the stars. A young approached him. The young had been born after the unified Galactic Council had been created. This had never known a time of war. This had friends from 50 different species. "Captain Minho," the young said, "I wanted to thank you. My parents told me that before you sent your message, we were not allowed to have our own thoughts. We had to think what the collective thought. But you showed us that being separate was not a weakness. You showed us that we could be both individual and together. Because of you, I am free." Minho put his hand on the young's shoulder. "You are not thanking me," he said gently. "You are thanking yourself, because the freedom you have, you will have to keep. You will have to make the choice every day to help each other. That choice never gets easier, but it is always worth making." The sun of the star system shined on the station. Above them, ships from 100 different species traveled peacefully through space. Below them, on the worlds of the region, new civilizations were being built. Young species were being contacted, not with weapons and fear, but with hope and welcome. And in the history files of 1,000 worlds, the story was recorded. The story of a small human cargo ship called the Pathfinder. The story of 8 ordinary humans who faced death and refused to accept it. The story of a message that went out into the darkness of space and changed everything. The story of how hope was stronger than weapons. The story of how one small act of courage could change the future of the entire galaxy. The SOS that Captain Minho Park and his crew had sent out was no longer a distress call. It had become a beacon that showed the way forward, a beacon that said, "You can survive, you can change, you can be better, you can work together, you can believe in each other." And across the galaxy, billions of beings from thousands of different species heard that message, and they believed it, and they lived it, and they passed it on to their children, and the children passed it on to their children. And in the darkness of space, the light of hope grew brighter with each generation. The end.